minimize risk and reduce power costs this summer. Our speakers today will be Hudson Gilmer, our VP of Commercial Markets, and Brian McIntosh, Director of PGM. I also just want to let you know that if you want to ask any questions, you can use the GoToWebinar question box on the side of your computer screen in the panel, and we encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation. We'll get to them at the very end. Now I'll just hand it over to Hudson.
Thanks a lot, Jamie, and thanks for everyone for joining today. One other maybe housekeeping note, just real quick. We will be sending a PDF version of this presentation to everyone who participated in the call, so no need to scribble notes down. What I'd like to do before we dive into this is we'll give a quick introduction to Genscape. As the title suggests, what I'd like to do is share essentially best practices that we've observed from a number of our PowerBuyer clients, how they're using the service to reduce their costs and minimize risks, and looking forward to this summer, some strategies that may be effective for you. As Jamie said, you should see a little dialog box on the right-hand side if you do want to ask any questions. So before diving into it, a quick introduction to Genscape. I think most people on the call are familiar with who we are. For the last 12 years, we've been focused on one mission, and that's really to bring transparency to energy and commodity markets. We started in power, and that's still a core of what we do. Many people know us from the real-time monitoring of generation and power lines, and that's depicted in the map on this screen here. And that's essentially any real-time desk you walk onto, you'll see the Genscape screen showing, essentially providing transparency on the supply side of the market, unit trips, power flows, congestion, and so forth. The other side of what we do, and the focus of today's call, is really what we broadly call market intelligence. And this also we've been doing for about the last 10 years, serving every deregulated market in the U.S. And we've got a team of about 50 analysts, meteorologists, developers, engineers who on a daily basis provide our clients with fundamental reports covering the regional power markets, providing price forecasts, describing market drivers and risks, detailing congestion, imports, outages, and so forth, and also providing seasonal outlooks. Now, historically, our focus has been primarily serving traders in the market, and in the last couple of years, we've expanded that focus with the PowerBuyer service that we've introduced, which is really focused more at the physical participants in the market. And over the last couple of years, we've built up dozens of clients in areas like retail electric providers, municipal utilities, smaller independent utilities, co-ops, and also industrials. Everyone from steel mills to industrial gases companies to chemical manufacturers and pulp and paper mills who are using us essentially to optimize their exposure to the wholesale markets. And they do it, and Brian will get into a little more detail showing you exactly what our clients receive and how they use it on a daily basis. But they do it primarily looking at our data to inform their decisions for how to bid for the next day. But they also use our longer-term demand forecasts to look at risks intra-month. And our clients provide, or our analysts provide clients with seasonal outlooks every quarter, looking out a little bit further. So today, the topic is really focusing on three strategies that utilize PowerBuyer to either reduce costs or reduce risk in these markets. And the first strategy is really where the service started, and that is using the PowerBuyer to optimize day-ahead and real-time bidding for tomorrow. We run fundamental models that forecast hourly, day-ahead, and real-time prices for the next day. Regardless of how well hedged a participant is in the forward markets, there will always be imbalances. There's always going to be some exposure that needs to be bid, and the default tends to be bidding it into the day-ahead market. And what we've shown is by using our fundamental forecasts, clients can consistently outperform a kind of default strategy, if you will, of just bidding everything into the day-ahead market. We're able to, through our models, through our real-time visibility on power plant output, identify periods when the day-ahead market is overcommitted and likely to lead to a lower real-time market and vice versa. And what we've shown and what we'll share with you today is that can reduce costs for buyers by between 4 and 10% over a pure day-ahead buying strategy. And this strategy isn't just looking to recommend the lowest cost market. It also is, the algorithm is designed to avoid recommending the real-time market during periods of high real-time volatility. And we'll get into how we do that once Brian goes into the reports. So to share a little more detail, what I'll do is move to probably an event or series of events that are fresh in everybody's mind, and that is the polar vortex, or I don't know what the plural of vortex is, but basically the very high demand and high price days that we experienced this past January. What you see in this graph here is the day ahead and real-time average 24-hour prices for every weekday day in January, actually every day in January. So the blue line is the real-time price, and the red line is the day-ahead price. And what I've done is highlight in yellow the 5 days where prices exceeded $500 per megawatt hour for a 24-hour average period, which is obviously, prices that can cause significant risk to any participant who has exposure in the short term. And a few comments here. One is that sometimes there's kind of a simplistic assumption that the real time is riskier than the day ahead, and I think this period, this month of January, shows that that's not always the case. Only one day in these 5 highest price days that we experienced was real time elevated above day ahead. And the entire back half of the month that you see here, essentially there was so much, well, Brian can explain much better than I can, but the day ahead was consistently clearing above the real time, and so our clients were able to take advantage of our ability to identify that overcommitment to the day ahead market. And what we can show is that we recommended real-time exposure on 70% of the days where that made sense during the month. And we provide forecasts for all of the PJM zones, and we delivered client savings who followed our recommendation in all of those zones based on our performance. And that savings averaged 6% below a cost associated with simply a pure real-time strategy. And I figured I'd also just share some excerpts from the reports, because there's the numbers, but then there's also the insights and analysis that are provided by our analysts. This is not just a statistical tool. This is actually being run by analysts with many years of experience in these markets. So if you look at that first peak period, our recommendation in the report that came out on the 6th or the 7th said morning and evening ramps riskiest in the real time. day-ahead prices, though high, may clear below real time. So here, actually, there's a case where we were showing that the day-ahead might clear below the real time, and indeed, that's what happened. As we move forward to these days later in the month, on the 21st for the 22nd, we said despite a strong day-ahead clear, PJM will likely be undercommitted in the real time, essentially showing that there was a risk that the real time would clear higher. In fact, the real time stayed below the day-ahead, but we obviously provided a prudent strategy for our customers. On the next day, a high day-ahead clear will mitigate the real-time volatility, which indeed happened. On the next day, 23rd for the 24th, after a volatile morning, prices are expected to clear below the day-ahead in the real time. And then finally, bullish demand presents real-time risks. So what you can see here is that it's a combination of the numbers and the analysis that are really what adds value for the clients. So obviously, you can kind of look at this and you can say, hey, that's 1 month. Tell me how you do over a longer period of time. We actually started the PowerBuyer service in the ERCOT market, in the Texas market, and we've been doing that since June of 2011. So what we figured we'd do is show our performance in ERCOT over that nearly 3 years. And what you can see here, there's a lot of information on this graph, but you can see that a pure day-ahead strategy results in an average cost, and these aren't load-weighted, but just simple average of all hours in the leftmost column here, compared to a PowerBuyer cost, if you follow our recommendations hour by hour in this column here. So the savings for PowerBuyer versus a pure day-ahead strategy range from 6.4 to 8.2% versus a pure day-ahead strategy. And clearly we've got very high retention rate from our clients, our PowerBuyer clients, and that's because we've shown over a long period of time that we can deliver savings versus a pure day-ahead strategy. Now you may argue having everything in the day-ahead avoids price spikes in the real time, so how does that compare to, say, a 50-50 fixed blend between day-ahead and real time? So we've actually taken that analysis as well and shown that column. And even if you compare that, say, active strategy versus a passive 50-50 blend between day-ahead and real time, you can see we're saving between 4 and 5% for our clients in ERCOT, and have about the same real-time exposure, about 50%. So moving on to the second strategy, this is one that has been really interesting to work with clients on over the last 12 or 18 months. What we've seen is that with the deployment of smart devices, both at residential and commercial end client facilities, that provides a mechanism to curtail load during periods of high prices. And essentially what we're doing is providing our clients a price feed for every hour for the next day. So what our clients can do with that is identify the threshold above which they want to cut back their power consumption, whether they're doing that automated or doing it on a manual basis by saying, hey, we're going to send everybody home and shut the plant down. And that can be done either using our day-ahead forecast or our Val-Day real-time forecast. And part of that depends on the situation of our client. Some clients have direct load control. They can, with confidence, decide I'm going to shut my facility down, or I'm going to fire up my cogeneration or my backup generation, and I know I'm going to reduce my load by doing this. Others, perhaps retailers who have commercial clients or even residential clients, may not know with certainty how much adoption their clients will take if they send a message out to them saying, this is a period when we want you to cut down. And so for them, probably more advisable to simply realize any reductions in load in the real-time market. But regardless, if you think back to January or think back to some of the high-priced summer periods that we've had, even if you're hedged, what this is doing is essentially you've got a price risk and a volumetric risk. The first point where we're talking about the day ahead versus real time is helping to address the price risk. This active load curtailment can help address the volumetric risk. On a very cold winter day when heating load is driving your load above what you had hedged, what this can do is cut into that hedge and help you essentially kind of sell back into the real time or reduce your volume exposure during those high price periods. And just for any stats geeks out there, one thing we've also done, sorry I'm going too fast here, is calculated the correlation coefficient, the R squared, between our forecast and actuals for both our Valday real-time forecast and the next day ahead forecast. And what we show here is our Valday real-time forecast is an R squared of 71% or 0.71, which essentially is saying that our forecast represents 71% of the variability in the actual Valday real-time price. And similarly, our next day DAM forecast is even higher in performance, 81% or 0.81. So the nice thing about this, if you are looking to trigger load curtailment, there's really kind of two ways to do it. One is to just watch the real-time price as it's coming in and chase spikes. And in many of the clients that we've talked to, that was their MO. That was the way they operated. When prices would spike up, they'd all of a sudden kind of try to shut down load. But the problem with that strategy is you don't know if a price spike is simply a momentary 5-minute blip or it's a sustained elevated price interval. So Genscape's PowerBuyer price forecast can help you in that morning receive a report that's showing you, for example, during hours ending 3 and 5 this afternoon, we're going to have a 3-hour block with prices at $150 or more. And that gives you the confidence to say, okay, I'm going to tell my customers or I'm going to tell my plant to shut down during that period, and it's going to be worth my while. And just for a numerical example, if we look again back to that January period in PJM, and this is for the PICO zone, if you take an example, assuming you've got a 5-megawatt load and can achieve 20% curtailment of that load, and say, I want to curtail for any price that is forecasted to be above $100, you would have experienced nearly $71,000 in savings just over that single month. So moving on to the third strategy that we wanted to share. This is not so much kind of a daily strategy, but this is one that actually has big implications for your costs for the next year. And this is essentially using Genscape alerts that are within the PowerBuyer service to avoid demand peaks and minimize your capacity charges. Now, the way this works, for any kind of industrial commercial customer, rule of thumb is about 3/4 of your energy costs are energy costs, are the energy component, and the remainder are your capacity charges, which are sometimes referred to as peak load contribution, PLC charges. And the way those are calculated, it differs in each different region. And we've included a blog link here where you can go into more detail. But just at a high level, in PJM, it's called 5CP. And what they do is essentially identify the 5 days with the highest peak demand, and your load or your client's load during those 5 hours is used as the basis for calculating capacity charges for the following year, for the entire following year. It's a little bit different in ERCOT. In ERCOT, it's called 4CP, and there's essentially 1 peak for each month between June and September. PJM, it's also between June and September. So there's, in ERCOT, yeah, there's 1 for June, 1 for July, 1 for August, 1 for September. So to the extent that you can have a warning of when those peaks are going to be set, you can, if you're an industrial, ramp down your operations or fire up your backup generation to reduce your net demand. And even if you're a retailer, you may not have direct exposure to the capacity charges because those are being passed on to your clients. But we have clients who do use the Genscape signal, retailer clients who pass it on almost as a public service announcement. And it earns a lot of goodwill with their clients. And there is an indirect benefit to the retailer because those peak hours also tend to be very expensive hours. So to the extent that you can reduce your client's demand during those peak hours, you're reducing your exposure during the hours you probably want less load the most. Now we've been doing this, this is our 2nd year we're doing it, and we have a 100% success record of correctly alerting the demand peaks. Of course, it's easy to say that if you send out a lot of false alarms, if you say, you know, there's going to be demand peaks every other day, and that's not what we do. We have a very accurate demand forecasting model, and we have teams of meteorologists who look carefully at this every day. So if we look at how we did last year in ERCOT, we only warned on 12 intervals for the 4 actual peaks. So we feel like that's about the right balance. And just to quantify kind of what that can mean to your bottom line, if we assume an industrial with a 5 megawatt peak load, and we assume that the capacity charge is $100 per kilowatt hour per year, if they can achieve a 30% reduction during peaks, then they would reduce the next year's capacity costs by $150,000. So you know, this is real money. We've actually got some industrial clients who have cogeneration capability on site, which they can fire up and reduce their demand to 0 during the periods that we warn them on. And for them, it can be an impact of 6 figures for a single month. So what I'd like to do then is switch gears. Those are the 3 strategies that we wanted to share with you, and we've referred a lot of times to PowerBuyer. What I'd like to do is hand over to my colleague Brian and have him just walk through explaining a little bit of just a minute here, not sure why this is happening. Explain the service. Okay, we're in.
Great, thanks, Hudson. So what you're seeing on the screen now is a copy of our PJM PowerBuyer report that came out this morning for tomorrow's market for the day ahead in the real time. There's a number of pieces to the report. I'll go through each piece individually. But to give just a slight background, I know Hudson touched on a number of pieces here, but just to give some idea of who's creating these reports and how they're created. The PJM team that I'm a part of, we have another 4 analysts, total of 5 on our desk that's looking at the PJM market each morning and running the models and coming up with the forecasts. We also have a team of meteorologists, one that's dedicated full-time to PJM itself, and they go in and they do their own demand forecasting, and they'll forecast demand by zone for PJM, and we've gone in and looked back at our performance and compared it to the ISOs, and we consistently outperform the ISO with our demand forecasting. So I think that alone is something that our customers find a lot of value in, just the load forecast that we're providing every day. But then to take that a step further, we're also providing some price forecasting and some more transparency in terms of day ahead versus real-time spreads. Now, so the report that you're looking at, it comes out each morning about 9:30 Eastern Time, and this first page that we're looking at is your price drivers and risks. The first thing you see on the page is over on the left-hand side is going to be your analyst commentary. This is a piece where when Hudson was showing that chart about January, this is the piece where our customers would look and really get some insight into what we're thinking about the day and where we're seeing the risks, whether it's the day ahead, the real time, and also if there's any specific zones or regions in PJM that if you have load in, you should be aware of whether there's risks or opportunity to take your power into the real time, or if you should go ahead and procure your load in the day ahead. So we look at the demand risk, the demand peaks for the RTO. We do look at any sort of congestion and generation changes to the supply stack as a whole, and then we go in and we offer a buying strategy just for PJM as a whole. We get more specifically into the zonal piece just down below in a minute, but we do spend some time just saying overall this is the kind of macro picture of PJM, if you want to think about it that way, and then really dial down into your specific region of PJM. On the right-hand side, you're seeing that next day demand forecast. The dotted blue line is showing you the balance of the day forecast that we have for today. The green line is showing our forecast. The black line is showing you PJM's forecast. Looking at tomorrow, PJM looks like they're pretty well situated. I think they have a fairly accurate setup for tomorrow, and we're in agreement with them. That's not necessarily extremely rare, but more often than not, we're showing some discrepancy between our forecast and theirs. And as we get down here into the zonal pieces, you'll see that a little bit more. The next portion of the report here is showing you the zonal breakdown of price and our recommendations. So on the left-hand side, you're seeing a pricing chart for ComEd. The gray line that you're seeing is showing you your day-ahead pricing that we're forecasting. The black line is showing you your real-time forecast for tomorrow. The green and red bars are showing you the day-ahead versus real-time spreads. A red bar is showing you that there's some real-time over day-ahead risk, while the green bars are showing you that we're expecting to see the day-ahead over the real-time. On the right-hand side, you're seeing pretty much the same information, at least on the left-hand side of that table, just in more of a numerical form, where you can look at hour by hour what our price forecast is for the day-ahead and what it is for the real-time. In the middle column, you're seeing what that spread actually is, hour by hour, and then kind of the key piece to this section of the report is really identifying the risk and then identifying the recommended strategy that we have. The recommended risk piece is where we look at the various hours of the day and identify the level of risk that you have in terms of real-time volatility. So a good example of this would be in the summertime, typically a afternoon or evening hour is when the supply stack gets a lot thinner and when you have a lot more risk of high prices showing up. So it's a lot less likely we're going to say, hey, you should go and take the risk of procuring your load in the real time in the afternoon in the summer. You can see that here, during your hour ending kind of 19 and 17, 18, 19, you're seeing high, medium, high risk. And what we're saying on this column, second to the right, is we're saying in the off-peak you should be buying day-ahead power. Once you get into the morning hours tomorrow, we're thinking that the best option is to purchase your power in the real time. And then over the evening peak, we think you should go back to that buying strategy in the day ahead. Reason being, just as I said before, it's the summer. There's more risk that you could see that real time really blow out over the day ahead, and we want to make sure that you're protected from that exposure. We then go and do this for each of the individual zones within PJM. The report itself doesn't have all 19 or 20 zones within PJM, but we do offer a XML feed that also has all of this data that you're able to just pull the hard data in, and you're able to see all of this information at your own pace, and you can specify what regions you're really interested in looking at. Hudson, do you have any additional comments on this piece?
No, yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, so maybe we'll also show, just as we look a little bit further out, we have a few other tabs. We don't have time to really go into a lot of detail, but we do provide a simple download of our demand forecast on this button here that can be pulled into CSV or Excel. And here we also have a tab that we actually developed with some of our retailer clients, which shows the 14-day demand forecast. We talked about the 5 CP risk, and here's where you would see if a given hour is at a risk to set that peak. As you can see for PJM, because of the way they do it, it's very likely that those peaks will be in the July-August time frame. We don't see any, or our meteorologists aren't forecasting any for the upcoming days.
So one area that we're looking at here is very closely is kind of Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. We had a lot of discussion whether we felt that was going to be that's, yeah, when you get into that kind of July 1st, July 2nd, we're really starting to push getting close. So one of the discussions we have with our meteorologists were how close are we to that 5 CP risk. As Hutch mentioned, PJM is a little bit more difficult, I think, than ERCOT, because for ERCOT you have to pick one day per month, whereas PJM you have to pick any 5 days between June and September. So we need to take into account that those 5 days could still occur on the back half of August or the first week in September. So it's a little bit more tricky. We still decided that based on our seasonal forecast, we did feel like that first few days in July did not have the CP risk that we felt was worthy of reporting to our customers. But to the effect of Hudson's second point, I believe, was the curtailing load curtailing load. I think this is a good example of how much everyone should be looking at those days in terms of how strong they are in comparison to previous years, and how likely we are to see some pretty strong prices that might require or suggest the opportunity to curtail some load. So the chart that you're looking at here is showing you the solid line is showing you our forecast for the next 14 days, or maybe 10 days, I believe, and then the dotted line is showing you the 14-year normal for this time of year. So what you can see is, a day like today, tomorrow, and this weekend, it's pretty normal starting today, and then as we get closer and closer into next week, we start to show up a lot stronger than what we normally see for this time of year. Now, while that's important, and I think that presents some definite real-time volatility risk. When we think about capacity penalties and charges, when we think back to last year, there was 1 week in mid to late July that the lowest 5 CT day was 150 gigawatts. The remaining 4 days were pushing close to 160 gigawatts. So I think that helps you kind of get a picture of what we're dealing with. So next week we're looking at 140 peak. We didn't feel like that was enough to kind of sound the alarm, so to speak, and let get people overly concerned about something that there may be more of a risk or more of an opportunity to pull back on a more important day.
But just to add a little bit, so this can kind of give you a picture looking into the first 3 days of next week when demand and subsequently prices are likely to be high, and this is used by our clients to, in the one case, if their hedges, if a retailer or a utility, for example, is hedging their forward positions based on normal weather, these are the days when you're going to be short. And you may want to go into the next week market and shore up your position. This can be one way to look at it. For an industrial or a large commercial client, they may be saying, hey, if I have operational flexibility and I can run a little harder over the weekend, I may want to build up some inventory before getting into those early days of next week. So these are different ways that our clients use this data. So the final point that I'll make just is what you'll see on the top of every report that we send out is the contact information for the analyst desk. This is not a statistical model. It's run by people who have intimate knowledge of what's happening in these markets. And so our clients don't just receive the reports, they also have access through IM, through email, through phone, to ask questions of the analysts and run separate scenarios or get more detail. So just to wrap up, the PowerBuyer service includes the daily reports that Brian walked through. Those are sent by email each morning in advance of the deadlines for day-ahead bidding. It includes recommendations on which market to bid load or buy or sell into, and obviously the analyst summaries. It includes access to client-only events like seasonal Outlook webinars. Also includes, as Brian mentioned, an XML data feed and the access to the analysts. So if you do have any interest, we do offer complimentary trials to qualified clients or participants. And I believe on the last page we do have the contact details there. But let me, before we go there, just open it up. Brian, did we get any questions?
Yeah, we had a couple questions coming through, and feel free to post any if you have any additional thoughts or questions or comments on the webinar. The first was regarding wind forecasts. Where do we get our wind forecasts?
It's a good question. We do have a proprietary model for wind forecasting. Like demand, we show Genscape's wind forecast alongside the forecast from the respective system operator, ERCOT or PJM. Our wind forecast is actually a joint effort where our weather partner, WSI, is providing hub height wind speeds for all the different wind farms in the region. And we run it through a model that also factors in congestion and curtailment, and then is essentially injecting that into our power flow model so that we get a good picture of the wind. And one thing I will say, especially if anyone has exposure to the western regions of PJM, we also do forecast the MISO market, and there's a lot of imports from MISO into PJM that can be driven by wind in MISO. So that can, we do see periods, for example, when we've got single-digit or negative pricing in ComEd due to just an abundance of wind coming from the west. So yeah, that's something we can provide good visibility on.
There were a couple questions about forecasting further out than next day.
So the PowerBuyer service, in terms of the price forecast, it's focused on next day. We do in several regions forecast. For example, PJM, we have a separate service that goes out covering balance of week and next week. In the West, we actually have a term, a West term product that goes out a full 12 months, and we'll forecast for the Western hubs, such as Mid-C and Palo Verde and Four Corners and so forth, everything from next day out through 12 months. But we do, as you saw, provide demand forecasting further out for both ERCOT and PJM as a part of the PowerBuyer service. So that goes out 7 days for ERCOT and 14 days for PJM.
I think you covered this, but in terms of a MISO product.
Yes, we do. So MISO, we haven't seen as much retail participation in MISO as we have in PJM and ERCOT, but we do offer what we call Power IQ, which is actually, it's using the same models. It provides even more kind of granularity around congestion and so forth. But short answer is yes, we do cover MISO and have forecasts for all the major hubs of both the day ahead and the real time, and that was extended as MISO extended to include MISO South and the Entergy footprint recently.
And we have one last question on how often the forecast team updates their projections for the real time and day ahead.
It's a good question. So this service is really designed to be used in that daily dam bidding process. And so our morning process is geared to get it out by around 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central Time. So it's updated once a day. The analysts are available throughout the day, so if there are events, if there are a large nuke trips offline, we see weather coming in much stronger than expected. We regularly will get, I think IM tends to be the preferred mode of communication between our clients and analysts, but our clients will call and often will send updates if there are major events that change our numbers. Okay, so with that, I want to thank everyone again for participating. This last slide just gives you contact details. So Melissa Westaway is our sales director for the East region. Zohar Asher is the sales director for the West region. You've got their contact details here. And if anyone's interested in a complimentary trial, there's a link here to go ahead and sign up for that. Thanks again.